They line up quickly. Spears is the running back. Play action. Ward. He's got a wide open Okonkwo. Chigo Okonkwo inside the 20. Stays on his feet. Okonkwo. Wow! Touchdown! What a play!
You got a little busy. Boy, these days are getting busy. Adam Peters, man, he is cooking. Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday of free agency week. Some of the new free agents are starting to hold press conferences. Tim Settle just said a little while ago, remember, he of Washington Draft 2018, said, quote, "Feels like I never left. The atmosphere here is amazing." But then he said, I do recognize, he said, that there are physical and spiritual, changes in the building since I was last here. Calls it, quote, a healed environment, close quote. That hasn't been the case for all of you this week. From Gary Z, he did kind of give a mea culpa. Gary Z writes, Kevin, sorry, I was one of those that laid the hammer to Peters on day one. My bad. Let him cook. This from Danny C in Potomac. Danny C wrote, Kevin, this isn't just directed towards you, but it includes you. I'm pretty much over being told to shut up and sit down because I'm not a fan of Adam Peters so far. It seems like many of you in the media are carrying the water for Peters and even Josh Harris instead of holding their feet to the fire. I've listened to you enough to know that you are more than capable of holding our owners and general managers to a high standard, but you don't seem willing to do it with Peters and Harris. And then to make matters worse, you and others in media turn to patronizing fans, and that's just wrong. I hope you'll read this. Danny C., I did read it. Yeah, look, I mean, this... First of all, I didn't tell anybody to shut up and sit down. That usually is a response that comes towards me, not from me, and usually has something to do with the name over the years, and usually from people who actually aren't even fans of the team or just got into town in the last few years. But anyway, yeah, I think what Danny C. is referring to is that there's no doubt I definitely said on Monday at some point, and maybe even on Tuesday, hey, deep breath, relax. You know, this is not, a 1 minute musical chairs game. This is like a process. Like we've done this before. It doesn't all happen in the first 15 minutes, first 20 minutes of free agency. They don't close the doors and say, that's it, we're sold out. Now, on some players, they commit somewhere else, but don't think that, Adam Peters isn't, involved in the players that he's interested in. The players that they identified, they have been aggressive towards, but it is a two-way decision street. The other guy needs to want to come here and wants to the money that's being offered here versus the money in another location. We're not, ostracized by the free agent community anymore like we once were. The only reason to come here from 2000 to 2009 was the money. And then from 2010 to 2020, the only reason to come here typically was, I don't have any other options, and I still want to play football. But it's not that anymore. This is a good place. This is a place where people think the coaching staff, the ownership, that there's competence in the organization, that they've got a quarterback, that they can win. But you're not going to get everybody, and it doesn't happen all in the first 15 minutes or so. So, Danny, I think that's where you're coming from. As far as carrying the water for Adam Peters, I mean, I don't know what you want me to say to that. I mean, I think he's done a pretty good job. I know not all of you agree. I mean, obviously, people like Ian and others wanted him fired, kind of almost before the season was over. They don't see any reason. They don't see any redeeming value. I just don't look at this last season the same way many of you do, and say they regressed terribly. I can look at the roster, and I can certainly size up the roster and say, not good enough, got to get better. But I also know what he came into, and I also know what was intended last year in terms of the players on the field. Now, I haven't carried his water. I've given him and Jeff Harris and the new group benefit of the doubt here in the first couple of years because they had a lot to fix. But it's my opinion right now that he's doing a pretty good job and has been doing a pretty good job. And if and when I feel like he's not doing a good job, I'll say it. And I'll back it up. But at this point, it's a lot harder to back up he's doing a terrible job than it is he's doing a decent job. And look, this free agency period, this Monday through, last night period, nothing's happened so far this morning, right, Max? Nothing that I checked right before we went on air. I don't see anything,
so
no
far,
new
nothing.
ads. I mean, at this point, they've added 8 new players, and they have spent top 3 money per spot track and have top 3 right now. It's a dynamic situation. It's changing every few minutes with teams adding players. But in terms of new players added, they're in the top 3. So they've been super aggressive. But by the way, aggressive doesn't mean they'll be right. Aggressive could still be wrong, and we won't know any of that, really, especially with this team where we have 2 new coordinators, and the one that we are really least confident in terms of what we're going to see on the field, that's where they've added the most players on defense. But yeah, Washington's been aggressive. They've been busy and as aggressive in spending and adding players as anybody pretty much in the league. And remember, they missed out on players. They missed out on Pierce. They missed out on Linderbaum, Jalen Phillips, Romeo Doubs, Trey Hendrickson. They're not going to get everybody. Again, it's a two-way street. The players, if Washington offers, they're not forced to accept the deal. Man, can you imagine, though? Because the reporting is that they were definitely in it with Trey Hendrickson. Can you imagine Hendrickson and Owe? I mean, Chason, I think, was next in line after they didn't, make headway with Hendrickson. Remember, they were interested in Hendrickson last offseason.
Well, did you hear what the Ravens wanted to do, Kevin?
Yes, I actually read the entire Eric DeCosta thing. And let me just say, I may be in the minority. I bet I am. I actually believe him. I don't think that this was a screwing over of the Raiders or a cold feet situation. That organization, I know that there's some background of Ryan Grant and a few others. I actually believe them. I don't think that they wanted Max Crosby to fail his physical or for them to get, a report on his knee that left them skeptical or worried, especially with 2 first-rounders. But anyway, that's beside the point. Yes, I read what he said. He said our plan was to not only, have Max Crosby, but to still go after Trey Hendrickson and team up Hendrickson and Crosby. That would have been something. You don't believe him?
No, I do. I absolutely believe that he was going to pair
I think a lot
both.
of people don't believe him.
No. If it was any team that wasn't the Ravens, I probably would be a little bit more skeptical. But knowing them and their desire to go out and get it like that, yeah, I wouldn't put it past Eric DeCosta at all.
They've been busy. They've been aggressive. They have added probably at this point no fewer than 3, more likely than not 4 starters on defense, maybe even 5. Certainly another 2 to 3 contributors on defense. It's been defense so far. Running back, none. Only 1 under contract right now, and that is Bill Krosky-Merritt, because they lost their first player yesterday, Chris Rodriguez. They didn't tender Rodriguez. Rodriguez signed with Jacksonville. By the way, 2 years, $10 million, I think, somewhere around there. Not a bad deal. The only offensive player at this point they have signed from the outside is Chig Okonkwo. I'm sure you guys, if you've been listening, you know how happy I am with that. And Marcus Mariota. Let's not underrate the fact that they brought Marcus Mariota back, and they've got a very good backup quarterback situation. Most teams don't in this league. And Marcus Mariota was looking for other possibilities. He's happy to be here. Spoke very highly about David Blau yesterday. But there was a preference going into free agency to move to the West Coast, where he could be closer to family and friends. But he really likes it here. Really likes David Blau. Really likes his role here. Mariota coming back is a big deal. And now add Chigakonkwo to the mix. And we are still missing, though, that receiver and maybe that running back. But not bad so far for Adam Peters and company. We won't know for sure. I mean, we can't evaluate this free agency class. I mean, we will in the moment based on what they paid for players, what they got, the needs they filled. Did they set themselves up, for the draft to where they could pick the best player available, which is what they should be doing anyway. They're doing all of that. But in terms of what the players produce here, a lot of times that is health, scheme, personality fit, dependent. All of that's in play. Some of these guys, you never know. Another big slug of cash into the account. How will they handle it? There is a theme, though, to a lot of what they've done. And I will talk about that shortly. But I am excited very much about what they're doing, but mostly just intrigued and can't wait to see what it looks like on the field next year. All right. Couple of things to get to. We've got a couple of guests on the show. Dante Whitner is going to be on the show. I actually had him on my podcast yesterday. I'm telling you, this was one of the more interesting conversations I've had in a while with an ex-player. Dante Whitner was a safety in the league. He actually finished his career here in 2016. Was, the number 6 pick in the draft all the way back in 2006. And played for a long period of time, Buffalo, San Francisco. He does a podcast, a 49ers podcast with Hall of Famer Patrick Willis. And I called him and asked him to talk about Brandon Aiyuk, and he did. And you're going to want to hear, this 15-minute conversation with Dante Whitner on Brandon Aiyuk, because Aiyuk, to me now, with no receiver added, Juwan Jennings is still out there, but with no receiver added yet in free agency, no running back added yet, only 3 receivers under contract on the roster, only 1 running back on the roster under contract. These are the areas in which they really haven't done anything, but they tried to do something, obviously, with Alec Pierce, tried to do something with Romeo Doubs. There are some reports out there that they were interested in Rico Dowdle, who ended up signing in Pittsburgh. But the Brandon Aiyuk thing is more than interesting. We had the tweet yesterday from Jonathan Jones, CBS Sports. Jonathan Jones tweeted out the following. When the 49ers release Brandon Aiyuk and he signs with the Commanders, the expectation is that it will be a 1-year deal. Washington isn't putting their wide receiver 2 eggs in his basket, though. It's a move that will come with a risk. Man, with Washington not adding a receiver and the 49ers, more likely than not, moving on from Aiyuk via a release, although I'll have an update to that in a second from Adam Schefter, everybody's connected the dots. Jaden Daniels, Adam Peters. If there's a place where he can resurrect his career, refurbish his image, which has been tarnished, it's here in Washington. It's where he wants to be. There's a massive need for another receiver. I'm telling you right now, I'd be shocked at this point if Washington doesn't sign Brandon Aiyuk. Now, Adam Schefter reported that the 49ers are not in any hurry to release him at this point. And the reason is there is no guaranteed money left on his contract. So they're willing to hold on to him for the time being to see if anybody's willing to trade anything of value to them. He said Washington makes a lot of sense. He played with Jaden Daniels. They're very close. He's sure Jaden would love to play with Brandon Aiyuk, but he doesn't get the sense that the Niners are in any rush to move on from Aiyuk, even though he knows, and everybody knows, they will eventually. So, interesting situation with Aiyuk. Look, he basically gave back $30 million. I mean, that's a red flag for poor judgment on its own. All he had to do was show up to the facility for the times that he was scheduled to show up to the facility to get his knee checked to see how the rehab was going. And he didn't. And it cost him $30 million. Insanity, right? Like, that's a massive, like, wait a minute. This guy doesn't have the maturity. He doesn't have the judgment. Why do we want him in our building? Well, there are always multiple sides to the story, and the truth typically lies somewhere in between, and he is talented. Somebody's going to give him a chance. Brandon Aiyuk hasn't played his last football in the NFL. I loved the player in 2023. You guys know that if you were listening. I thought coming off that season, I'm like, during that season, he is so underrated. He is such a separator. He's got great hands. He comes up big in the biggest spots. He is a true top 10 receiver. He was at the end of 2023. No doubt. If he comes back healthy like that, then I'm interested. A lot of safeguards, has to be a deal they can get out of, but I'm interested. But Dante Whitner, who covers the 49ers, has a podcast, played in the league, and is really a smart dude. You're going to want to hear what he has to say. I'm going to play it for all of you at 11 a.m. Also, Vinny Serrato. We were going to play some of that for you the other day. We just ran out of time. But Vinny Serrato had some interesting things to say about Odafe Owe, who played in Baltimore. Vinny does a Baltimore radio show, and you'll want to hear what Vinny thinks of Owe. I think you will. Anyway, he likes him, but there's something about him that he doesn't necessarily like. All right, let's get to it. What do you got? So I've mentioned this before, and it is just somebody in sports right now that I love watching as much as anybody else. And I didn't watch this last night because I don't have the NBA League Pass, but a lot of their games have been on TV recently. The LA Clippers are the first team in NBA history to go from 15 games under 500. They were 6-21 to one game over 500. That was accomplished last night when they beat the Minnesota Timberwolves 153-128. They're 33-32 right now. And I'm telling you, those of you that follow the NBA, they're a threat to upset somebody like a San Antonio in the first round if they can get to that 7-8 and get in that way, and they're in a 2-7 first-round matchup. And the reason the Clippers have turned it around, despite trading Zubats, their center, and James Harden, is one Kawhi Leonard. This dude is having he's having his best season of his career. He's having an MVP caliber season. Look, Cade Cunningham, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Wembanyama, Jaylen Brown, all great seasons. No one in this league has strapped a team to his back like Kawhi Leonard has this year when they were 6-21 and done what he's done. He won't get the MVP. He'll be in the running. He'll get votes. He won't be in the running. We won't win it, though, because it's not a good enough team record-wise. Last night, in just 32 minutes, because he essentially didn't play the fourth quarter, 45 points on 15 of 20 from the floor, 6 of 9 behind the arc, 9 of 10 from the free throw line, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals per usual. His plus minus was plus 41. The next best on the team was plus 19. He is having a monster season. He's averaging over 29 a game since February 1st, over 28 a game since January 1st. He's had multiple 40-point plus games. He had a 55-point game. This guy is one of the greatest of all time. And he just doesn't get talked about in that way because he's had a lot of injuries. And his picture's right next to the definition of load management and what's wrong with the NBA. And he's a weird guy, and he's an odd guy, and he's got an uncle that's nuts, and he's involved in this perhaps circumventing the salary cap with Ballmer, the owner of the Clippers, shenanigan from, the last couple of years. But in terms of player, when he's been healthy, and remember, the load management is because he's had serious injuries, torn ACLs. There's been no better two-way player during his era. No better. Maybe LeBron. He'd be a top 10 gimme all-time player had he played enough during his career. Last year, just 37 games, 22, 23, 50 games, 52 games, and then got hurt in the playoffs a couple of times too. This will be his highest, most likely his highest scoring average season. He is shooting 50% plus from the floor. He's at 38 right now behind the arc. He was at 40 plus, and he's at 90.6% from the free throw line. So he does have a chance to finish the season as a 50, 40, 90 guy. 50 from the field, 40 plus from behind the arc, and 90 plus from the free throw line. His defense is stellar. He's averaging the most steals in his career since he was a much younger player back in 2014, 2015, averaging 2 steals per game. Just if you want to watch something that's just been a pleasure to watch over the last couple of months, the next time, I'm not telling you to get the NBA League Pass. I don't have it. But they're on TV a lot, whether it's Amazon or Peacock or ESPN, NBC. The next time you're flipping it around and the Clippers are on, just watch this dude operate. He gets wherever he wants to get. He gets any shot he wants to get, and it looks like he's not even trying. Defensively, he's as disruptive at 34 years old as he's ever been with those long arms and that claw. Teams try to run stuff. He is so, even when he doesn't get a steal, even when he doesn't get his mitt on it, he's disruptive. And then teams have resorted to basically doubling him. The Knicks the other night, they beat the Knicks the other night. They doubled him for 35% of the possessions. And they scored 1.7 points per the doubled possessions because he was so good at drawing the double, creating the spacing, dropping it off to somebody like Lopez or somebody like that, and it ended in a dunk somewhere or a wide open 3. I've always been the biggest fan of him going back to college. There's something about the way he does it. It looks so effortless. It looks like he doesn't really try that hard. He's a top 10 player of all time had he played the normal number of games without all the injuries he had. Not to mention how much more playoff success he'd have had he been healthy. We'd consider him a top 10 player of all time. Yes, we would. We'd consider him ahead of Durant in this era because of his two-way ability, because he's been the best defender at that position during his era. He's a 2-time NBA Finals MVP, and the LA Clippers, they made the trade. They traded Harden to Cleveland, and they got Garland back, and he's played very, very well. They got Matherin back for Zubats in the Indiana trade. They got a guy that's hurt right now that was playing very well in John Collins. It's a team, I'm telling you right now, they're gonna be in the play-in. They're probably not going to be able to get out of the play-in, but 7-8 play-in somewhere in that. If they get San Antonio and Wemby in the first round, Clippers in 6. As long as Kawhi's healthy, knock on wood. He's played better than anybody in the league this year. He won't get the MVP, but he's been the best two-way player in the NBA this year. All right. Somebody mentioned to me, you don't talk about Maryland anymore. Why not? I mean, they're losing, so you don't talk about them? Max, I've talked about them.
Many times.
Many times. The season's over. They actually played really hard and played pretty well against Iowa. They
were up
lost
for a
by
little bit.
11.
Yeah.
Season's over. Thankfully, by the way, it was terrible. Hopefully next year's better.
I would have preferred a few more games out of it, but that's just me.
All right, when we come back, my thoughts on the 4 new ads yesterday. Actually, I think we did Chase on already.
We
did Chase on the show. So the 3 players added after the show ended: Chiga Okonkwo, Nick Cross, and Charles Omenihu. We'll do those 3 when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. All right, 3 players added after the show ended yesterday. Chig Okonkwo, Nick Cross, and Charles Omenihu from the Chiefs. He's the one that is probably the first one where there's a little bit of risk. I'll get to that in a moment. But I want to start with the guy that I've been kind of pining for since the season ended and we started to talk about free agency. I've been a big Chig fan since his days at Maryland. I used to kind of refer to him as Vernon Davis light. No one's Vernon Davis, or no one has ever been Vernon Davis at Maryland in terms of athleticism. Vernon Davis is one of the all-time college freaks. Seriously. I'm not talking about, at Maryland. I'm talking about anywhere. The SEC, the Big Ten, doesn't matter. He was an absolute physical, athletic freak, which is why he went, number 6 overall to San Francisco, whatever it was. Chig Okonkwo is not that. He's not Vernon Davis, but he always kind of played like Vernon Davis stylistically. The size is similar. Vernon always kind of looked bigger, but I compared their heights and weights. They're pretty similar. Chig 6'3", 235, 240. He's a pass-catching tight end primarily. Okay, I'll start with that. This, by the way, to me is a sign that Sinnott's not the role. Sinnott's not right now what they think of when it comes to replacing Zach Ertz. That's why they signed Chig Okonkwo. He is more of a tight end that's going to replace Ertz. Hell, Chig can line up almost anywhere. I mean, he's a good route runner. He's got very good hands. I'll get to that in a moment. But I was thinking that going back to that Peters quote when they drafted Sinnott and they were kind of recapping the draft, and he said, reminds me of Kyle Juszczyk. Well, Kyle Juszczyk is a fullback. And Sinnott hasn't had that opportunity because in the Kingsbury system, there's really no fullback. The 49er system there is. The Kyle Shanahan system there is. Ben Johnson's system, not so much. But H-back, fullback, Sinnott not right now for them good enough, or the confidence level not high enough that, hey, we can get him 75, balls a year plus. Okonkwo is, it also is an indication, right, I think, that they're going to move on from Ertz. Not that was, in play anyway. So, again, really good in college and first 4 years in Tennessee with no quarterback, Will Levis. And then this year, the rookie came along. He did. But bad teams, bad offensive teams. I think the thing about Chig, first and foremost, if you haven't watched him, he's so good after the catch. And it's not just that he's a physical runner, which he is, or he runs people over, which he does. It's that he's got very good vision as a runner in the open field. I mean, he is a guy that in the open field with the ball in his hands makes people miss. But then he's also seeking out contact, as he goes towards the sideline. He's not going out of bounds. He's looking for the safety to lower his shoulder and run over. But he's got really good vision and great spatial feel, which helps him as a route runner, especially in against zone coverage. So he's really, really good after the catch. He's a very good route runner. He is a hands catcher. He's got soft hands. He's got great feel, again, for space as a pass receiver. The thing that actually surprised me, and I don't know that I mentioned this before yesterday because I didn't look it up, I don't think, before yesterday. I would have remembered it. But he did not test well in 2022 in terms of relative athletic score. The numbers were okay, but that relative athletic score was near the bottom for the tight ends in the 2022 class, which is probably why it took 9-10 tight ends picked before he went in the 4th round to the Titans. So he ran 4.52. That's more than good enough for a tight end. I think the athleticism and the explosiveness may not have shown up in the Underwear Olympics in Indianapolis in 2022, but they show up when he's in uniform as a player on the field. He's explosive. He's got speed. He's athletic. He also doesn't miss games. He's played all 17 regular season games in all 4 of his seasons. Is he a great blocker? The advanced numbers would say no, he's not. But I think he's a willing blocker. He's not, an unwilling participant as a blocker. I don't think he's a massive liability at the position. The advanced numbers say less than average as a blocker, for whatever it's worth. I like the player. He's very smart. I had Suter on with me yesterday on the podcast. He called all of his games at Maryland and said the thing about Chig, he's such a smart guy. I think he said he's got, an advanced degree or two. Always super cerebral, thoughtful, good in the locker room. I like the player. I like what I've watched on the field since he was in college. The money's reportedly, 3 for 30. So as the AAV goes, it's top 15-ish money for him, somewhere around there. Yeah, I really like this signing. I think that they needed it, and I think it's a really good player who could be truly ascending into a much better player productivity-wise because he's going to be on a team that's going to have a quarterback. Love Chig Okonkwo and the signing there. Nick Cross, safety, same class as Okonkwo. Actually came out early, but played with Okonkwo at Maryland. He was one of those guys when you watch the Terps, you're like, he just looks like a Sunday player. And he turned out to be. Got drafted in Indy, 4 years as a Colt. Third round, he went in 2022. 6 feet, 215, 24 years old, can really run. And here's the thing, and I don't know that I felt this with him coming into the pros out of Maryland. I didn't think he'd be as good as an in-the-box safety, strong safety, as he's turned out to be. He has excelled for the last 2 years in particular at the line of scrimmage. I mean, listen to this. Among defensive backs in the NFL, only Arizona's Budda Baker has more tackles in the box than Cross's 266 for Indy. He's done a phenomenal job. I mean, I think you pencil him in as the strong safety. Will Harris is your free. But there's versatility there with both of them. And obviously there's versatility with Quan and, some versatility with Reeves. I think that they did a good job in getting a player. I think he and Will Harris are your starting safeties. And maybe it's that you got 3 safeties on the field a lot of the time with Quan or even with Reeves. And maybe Nick Cross ends up being more of a, Buffalo nickel. But 24, 6 feet, 215, can really run, super athletic, high RAS score for him. We know that Peters loves that. I don't knock this one at all. And then Washington late last evening, or maybe early in the evening, they signed Kansas City Chiefs defensive end, edge, some versatility there, though, Charles Omenihu. So this is, again, like we were talking about Sheehan. You watch the Chiefs and, Chris Jones, obviously, McDuffie defensively, the scheme with Spagnuolo, with Karlaftis in recent years. And there's always been some of these other guys. Bolton always has stood out. Sheehan's actually stood out a lot with Bolton. Charles Omenihu, 6'5", with arms that literally hang to the ground. 36-inch arm length, 99 percentile at the combine when he came out of Texas back in 2019. He was a 5th-round pick, 161st overall by the Texans. He ended up in San Francisco briefly, and then ended up in Kansas City. He signed a 2-year deal with the Chiefs in the free agency period of 2023, and he immediately got suspended 6 games to start the 2023 season for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. It was a domestic violence situation. He also, when he came back in 2023, playing in 11 games, missing the first 6, had 7 sacks that season, had a sacked forced fumble on Lamar Jackson in the AFC Championship game, but he also tore his ACL in that AFC title game when the Chiefs went into M&T Bank and won against the Ravens. So he did not end up playing in the Super Bowl 2 weeks later when the Chiefs beat the Niners in overtime 25-22. He was placed on the PUP list, activated in November of 2024, and then ended up, re-signing and playing last year on a 1-year deal and played all 17 games last year, 3.5 sacks last year coming off the injury season. Were mostly the lost 2024 season because of injury. Here's what shows up. Like you think about Owe, Omenahu, Sheehan to a lesser degree in terms of arm length. And I don't know specifically. I think Omenahu is definitely an edge and a pass rusher. Who knows? Maybe he is, in a base 3-4. Maybe he is a 5 technique. Maybe he's a defensive end. But as a pass rusher, what you see with him and Owe is you see taller guys, long-armed, angular, and relentless, high motor dudes. He has, his 36-inch, put that next to, what was Reuben Bain's arm length? Like 32 inches?
No, 30.
30 inches. No, I thought it was almost 31.
It was like 30.5 or something.
Yeah. He's got 36-inch arms. 36-inch arms. And you see it on the field. He's disruptive. He tips passes. There was an interception last year in a game that Herbert threw down in the red zone that he tipped and it was picked off. He's got a lot of pass deflections in his career. He's got like 6 or 7 forced fumbles in his career. So him and Owe, man, you're going to have tall, long-armed, edges. Chaseon's arms aren't as long, but he's got athleticism. He's got speed. Sheehan, speed. They have gotten younger for sure. Let me see the ages because I think Ben put them all down in one spot. Yeah. So Omenahu's 28, going on 29. Cross is 24. Okonkwo's 26. Chaseon's 27. Sheehan's 25. Settle is the veteran here, 29. Robertson's 28 and Owe's 27. And how about some of these 40 times? Owe ran 4.36, Robertson 4.45, Sheehan 4.53, Okonkwo 4.52, Cross 4.34, and Omenahu, I think, ran 4.8 as an edge. Yeah. Younger, faster, longer, certainly in those edge positions, in those pass rushing positions. So I like all 3 players. Omenahu's got some, there's certainly a couple of red flags, suspended once for 6 games, but we don't know where he is. Mental maturity at this point, overall maturity at this point. Had a serious injury, but for him, 1 year, $7 million, worth it. Nick Cross, 2 years, $14 million. By the way, even if that's incentive based on the $14 million upside, he's still likely the highest paid safety. Remember, Will Harris last year got 2 years, $8 million, $4 million a year. Cross is higher than that. Washington so far, I think when the season ended, I said, give me, 4 to 5 new starters on defense and another 2 to 3 contributors. Owe, Robertson is the nickel corner starter. Cross, Chaseon, Omenahu. I mean, you've got, Settle. I don't know. Is he a nose tackle? They got 4 starters minimum in Owe, Robertson, Cross, and Chaseon. Or it's Sheehan, excuse me. Sheehan, Owe, Robertson, Chaseon. They've got 4 starters right there minimum. And then the others are really in the rotation if they're not on the field when the game begins. And then they got a tight end, but they're missing a running back and a wide receiver. There's still more time. Rashad White's still out there. Jawan Jennings is still out there. And certainly Brandon Aiyuk is still out there. All right. Phone lines open. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. We are, now approaching day 4. By the way, the league calendar and the official start of free agency was yesterday at 4 p.m. So no more of the legal negotiating with all the announcements. I mean, it's kind of stupid the way they do it. Free agency starts Monday at 12 noon. That's the bottom line as far as fans go. But where are you on what they've done so far? And I don't need to know where you were 10 minutes after it started, because I know a lot of you were very angst-ridden over the way day 1 started in the first few minutes, first few hours. But here we are on Thursday of free agency week, and Washington's top 3 in money spent, top 3 in new players added, and they have addressed a lot of needs. But there are others that are still out there. And this is a long process. It doesn't end after the first week. 301-230-0980. Your call's next. from David. David writes, do you think the plan may include to bring Debo back? I don't know. I mean, they've only lost one of their own. It's early. We didn't think that any of their own were wave one free agents. So I've seen a lot of the bashing of, I mean, nothing says they've had a terrible roster more than none of their own free agents have been signed. Yeah, it's wave one. None of them were necessarily wave one quality. I thought Chris Paul would be gone by now. I did.
Jacob
There's
Martin just
reporting
got
that
signed.
did he get signed?
Yes, by Tennessee, 2-year deal worth up to $11 million.
Did that just happen?
Yeah, like 5 minutes ago.
So Chris Paul's gone.
No. Jacob Martin, not Chris Paul.
Oh, Jacob Martin got a 2-year deal.
Yes.
With Tennessee.
Yep.
So now it's Rodriguez and Jacob Martin are the only two.
Yep, so far.
Yeah, interesting, because I clearly going into this, they've been so busy, obviously, on defense. The likelihood of not, re-signing Jacob Martin was becoming more probable with each day that passed. He really played well last year. Wait, say it again. 2 years what?
2 years, max value of $11 million.
Good for him. Good for him. I mean, the tape don't lie on his effort and his motor. That's for sure. But, we kind of knew that this was going to be kind of a second, third wave free agency group. So some of these guys will still get signed. That means that Chris Paul is still available. I did see Jets and Giants. He's met with both of them. Could he be back? I don't know. Could Debo be back? I don't think Debo's going to be back. I mean, it would have to be on.
Like, we've heard nothing from that camp. Or his name hasn't even made the rounds, like, at least on my timeline. I don't know about yours.
I'm wondering why Juwan Jennings hasn't been signed yet.
I think he wants a lot.
Not at the Alec Pierce level or Dobbs level. We knew that. But, it's Aiyuk and Jennings. And by the way, Stephon Diggs and Debo Samuel in terms of the wide receivers, that are out there right now. I mean, in free agency. Running back wise, who's left? Rashad White from the list of,
That's kind of it.
What?
It's kind of it, man.
That's it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, the long and short of it, like, I'll pull up the list, but that's the only name that's going to move me if we brought him in would be Rashad White.
And he, of course, played with Jaden in college. All right, reaction to this first week. Let's get some calls in. And you're going to want to hear Dante Whitner talk about Brandon Aiyuk. We'll get to that in about 20 minutes. But let's start with Lap. Lap, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kevin?
How are you?
Hey, man, good. Yeah, man, these pickups was definitely needed, man. And I've been saying for a while, Jaden needs a tight end, like a safety net, man, for sure, on some plays, and definitely a pass-catching tight end. I like all the moves so far. I am open to bringing Debo back. I told you that before. I still want Carnell Tate, and I'm also open for Brandon Aiyuk. I know we missed on some of those other receivers. I think day one or two, but I think we need like two other receivers, and it would be good to get a young or veteran or both, as well. So I think that can help our offense out a lot. But Jaden has some assurances of who he can consistent. But that tight end, I think, is going to be really big, Kevin. So
I'm excited about Okonkwo, especially in this offense, especially with Jaden at quarterback. He has not had a quarterback, and I think that he will benefit from having that. And cannot wait for that.
And I'm excited. And I'm excited about the coordinators too, Kevin. I really want to see, especially the offensive side, man. I'm curious to see. Do you think we probably can get a running back too, possibly, or?
Well, I mean, there is going to be a running back in the draft that may or may not be available at number 7, and I think a lot of our fans are now thinking it's Tate or Jeremiah Love. I've seen a lot of mocks post these first few days of free agency that now have Jeremiah Love gone by 7. We'll see. Lap, thanks. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll take more of your calls next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
with all 3 timeouts left, getting the ball back after the half.
3rd and 7. And it's intercepted. Herbert is picked by Cross.
That's not what they were looking for. They're going to see he had all day long in the pocket. He saw Nick Cross's back turned and thought he'd be able to lead Quentin Johnson out in front. And Cross just does an unbelievable job of turning his head at the last second and kind of making a one-handed pick, batting it to himself a little bit here.
Washington's added 8 new players. They've spent top 3 money in free agency, and they've addressed a lot of needs. Look, they went defense, defense, defense. Of the 8 new players, only Chiga Okonkwo plays offense. They did re-sign Marcus Mariota, so it's 9 players actually in free agency, 8 new ones, and we'll keep it here today. Could be more to come. What do you think of the week so far? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. From my guy Chuck, he's like, I thought you liked Cam Ward. I do like Cam Ward, but it was kind of a slow go his rookie year. They haven't had outstanding quarterback play with Chiga Okonkwo in Tennessee. That's all. I mean, Cam Ward, I think he actually really started to play well towards the end of last year. There's some promise, but he's not a finished product by a long shot. Do want you to know that right now, how about, by the way, real quickly, 85 degrees yesterday, snowing right now. That is about as massive a turnaround in less than 24 hours weather-wise that we've ever experienced. I'm going to be following Capital Weather Gang today, Max, to see if like a 45-degree temperature drop from basically summer humidity and heat to, winter that quickly has ever happened. That's Denver weather. That's like the Rockies, what happens out there. All right, 301-230-0980. Window Nation is offering 50% off everything right now. So if you've been thinking about new windows, all I ask is call Window Nation at 866-90-NATION. Go to windownation.com. Either way works. Mention my name and schedule a free in-home estimate. If you've been thinking about swapping out older windows for newer windows, just give them a chance to come out and give you a free in-home estimate. They're not going to pressure you into making a decision. There's no obligation. It takes an hour or less. You'll actually find out which windows in your home need to be replaced. And if you decide to move forward with Window Nation, 50% off everything. They'll install those windows in a day or less. They'll leave you with a lifetime warranty. Their installers do it right the first time. They measure each window 3 times to ensure proper fit. 96% of their installs require no follow-up service, and they leave your home looking nicer than when they arrived. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com for your free in-home estimate and a chance at 50% off any of their 1,500 windows and window styles. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Skip. Skip, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Kevin,
yes.
All those people that called on Monday, they just look ridiculous. Because, first of all, that was the first day. You can't make any conclusions. So now, we have all these players. I said, that Peterson was going to have to get a roster, basically, something he didn't do last year. I don't really understand why, but it's okay. But he has certainly gotten everything you could have wanted on defense, pretty much, and a tight end. Okay? So, I don't know. I think the only question mark that I have, I'm very satisfied. Obviously, the biggest pickup and, the most and all for great prices. The contracts are all very reasonable. Obviously, the biggest one is Oweh, and if he measures up, if he's a true all-pro player for the amount of money they're paying him, then it's definitely a really good. I can't think of a better job. I'm really very impressed. The only question mark I have is at center.
Yeah.
Releasing Biadasz.
Right there, Skip. That right now for me, like I'd love to be a fly on the wall to know what the idea was when they turned Biadasz loose. Was it that, look, whether we get somebody to replace him that's better or we don't, we're not into him, we're not into the money, whatever it is. I'd like to know what that was. They clearly were very much in on Tyler Linderbaum. All right. You know, one of the top free agents. Didn't get him. What's the plan? Is it Allegretti? That's the one where even before they play a game, because really you can't be definitive about any of this stuff until they start playing games, other than, you know, did they get value or didn't they get value based on the sort of the consensus projection of what these players were going to get. But that's the one where if we're sitting here in August and you're calling me and Nick Allegretti is the starting center, I'm going to be like, I have a feeling they really effed up on this. I don't think that that's really what they wanted the result to be. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's like, hey, we're going to try to do much better, but we feel really comfortable if it ends up being Nick. I don't know. But that's the one that, to me, really would be interesting to know for sure what the plan was and how far off from executing on that plan they are. Anyway, thank you,
In the
Skip.
draft, maybe a second day pick in the draft.
Yeah, but you're not. That's not a 2026 starter. More likely than not, could be, but
True.
not more. You know, you've got to have a qualified, capable center with your quarterback who's going to be going under center, by the way, more than he has ever in his lifetime of playing quarterback, with a new coordinator. It's nice to have. That's why Linderbaum would have been interesting, and that's why I actually would have been okay with, say, the extra $10 million over 3 years, given that they have the space, because you would have been getting a veteran with wisdom, with production, with talent, and stability. And I'm a bit concerned about that position. Thank you, Skip, as always. Ian, go ahead.
I said this the other day. Look, there's not a ton of players that are free agents that are all Pro Bowl caliber players. We recognize that. So the players they've added, there's
well,
a lot
you actually didn't
like,
say that the other day. I think you've just learned that since we talked the other day. Maybe I told you that.
On Monday. I said on Monday, there's not a
Where are all the Pro
Bowler
Bowlers and where are all the All-Pros?
Right. And they still have yet to add one. And I fully.
Well, that's because they're usually not available in free agency. That you corrected yourself from the other day. You don't have a lot of Pro Bowlers and All-Pros unless they're aging players more often than not. Alec Pierce, the #1 free agent, Malik Willis, no Pro Bowls, no All-Pros. Linderbaum has some Pro Bowls. You know, I'm not saying that, but most don't, because if you have that kind of player and they're young or they're entering their prime, you want to keep those players on your roster. Yep. Even you understand that.
Yeah. So let's set that as the baseline. So we're with you. I'm with you. I don't see many impactful players. And the only one I can agree with you on is maybe Owe, because there is a belief that it wasn't a fit in Baltimore, and then maybe with San Diego, or the Chargers rather, he kind of rose up and there's a potential. So let's say that. But I looked at the over-under for Washington now and prior to free agency starting. For most teams, it hasn't.
They haven't even updated those numbers yet. Most shops haven't even updated those numbers yet.
Your shop, who do you always reference that gives fair lines?
My
they
bookie.
Just updated a day ago.
Yeah.
They just updated a day ago. But again,
so just net it out for us. Honestly, this is one of those days I can't let you go on. Just net it out for us. Give me your grade so far through the first 3.5 days of free agency.
B-, C+. These are
wow.
Guys.
That's way higher than I was expecting.
Oh my God. I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
I mean,
based on some of your, tweets, that I somehow get roped into. I don't know how I do because it's really, really dreadful, you on Twitter. But I thought for sure you were going to hit me with D minus.
D
It's
plus
usually your
generous.
disposition, just in
I
tone
think it's
overall. This is incredible. B minus is an average. B plus is an average.
No,
It's
I
better
think
than average.
B
The
minus-
thumbs up.
Maybe for you because you were an academic powerhouse. Did you, when you brought home a report card that had B's on it, did you get in trouble?
It didn't happen very often.
Shocker.
It didn't happen very often. No.
If you don't say so yourself. I set him
Yeah,
up
I
for
mean,
that, though. He had to answer it. All right, thank you. I got to move on. Jalen, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
What's up, Jalen?
So I think it's been a really good week so far with the team and all of the additions that they've been able to acquire. I'm extremely pleased on what we've done, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I love the emphasis that we've placed on bolstering the front seven in particular. I really like Leo Chenal, Nick Cross, and Adolphe Owe. We now have guys at every level of our defense that are fast and have proven themselves to be productive playmakers. So I'm extremely happy about that. Offensively, I'm with you on Jawan Jennings. I really would like to see us add him. I'm also open-minded to the possibility of Brandon Aiyuk coming along. Also, Chika Konku, I like his potential and just the dynamic ability that he brings to our tight end position. Overall, I feel like that we are a better football team, and I feel confident in that. I just hope that guys can buy into the systems that we'll be implementing as far as Dante Jones and David Blau. I hope that, guys can stay healthy this year and we can begin to just build chemistry and get this thing back to where we had it in 2024. So thank you guys for taking my call. Hail to the Burgundy and Gold.
Yep. Thanks for calling, as always. Yeah, it's going to be interesting just to see, where all these pieces fit. Obviously, always easy, right? He is a 2-point stance, outside edge, 3-4 linebacker, but as an edge pass rusher. I think that one's kind of easy. I think that Leo Chenal's easy. He's an off-ball linebacker, but they're going to use him in a lot of different ways. I think that Amik Robertson's pretty easy. He is a nickel corner, slot corner, although he's got the versatility. I think I mentioned the other day, 34% of his snaps were in the slot last year in Detroit. So he can play on the outside, and we know Sanders still can play on the outside and on the inside. Tim Settle, I'm not exactly sure where he will settle in. See if he said anything today about what they told him about the position he's going to play in his presser today, Max, because I just saw a couple of the quotes about, returning to Washington. Because when they signed him, I thought maybe he's their nose. And so Okonkwo's pretty easy. Nick Cross, I think, is easy. I think he's an in-the-box primarily safety, and I think Will Harris is out there with him as the free. But with Durante Jones, there's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff going on with their defenders. Amenahue is just going to be, go do your best to go get the quarterback, but I think he's okay against the run. Chase on, go get the quarterback. Yeah. Where are we going next? We're going to our guy Stan in New Jersey. Stan, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
What's up, Stan? How are you?
Not too bad. So you are forgetting running back Brian Robinson out there, if anyone cares.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Biotish thing really drives me nuts just because this team had no, obviously, top free agents, and that's evidenced by nobody picking anyone up. This guy Biotish gets released and gets signed within one day. I don't know what they're doing there. That is the one thing about Peters that I'm really upset about. Other than that, I think he's done a good job at free agency. I don't know what they're going to do at the receiver position and what we're going to be doing at the draft. I wouldn't mind going in some kind of route like this and taking a little bit of a gamble here. I don't love Jeremiah Love, and I don't know if Cornell Tate's even going to be there, nor do I think those defensive ends are going to be there. And I don't want any part of those Ohio State kids.
You don't want any part of Caleb Downs? By the way, Caleb Downs is not off the board because they signed Nick Cross people, if you think that's true. He signed a 2-year deal.
Safety, though, and I'm not in love with that, taking that position.
Okay.
I do love that. I mean, they're going to have Will Harris, Jordan McGee, and Dorrance Armstrong as new starters, too. So I'm those guys missed half the year last year. So
right.
I am intrigued by that, but I don't really care about the Ohio State guys. I'm willing to take a gamble here and go a little bit outside the box here. I don't love Cornell Tate, and I don't love Love. I'd like for them to just go 1-year flyers on like Aiyuk or if they want to go Jennings for two years or something like that. I'd love a flyer on those guys. But what I'd really love to do is call the Jets right now and say, no. I want the Jet. I want to give away our number 1 pick. Have the Jets give me back both of their number 2s this year. And it has to be their number 1 next year. And I'm going to bet, and I'm going to gamble that the Jets come in the top 3, because they will with Geno Smith and Aaron Glenn. They're going to be a top 3 team. I want that pick, and I want Jeremiah Smith, and I want somebody else to go with Art.
Let me just tell you what teams are not – here's what teams are not really up for doing, Stan, is – and I know that Baltimore was in the Crosby deal – but next year's draft, on paper anyway, is a much better draft than this draft. So especially if you don't have the quarterback like the Jets, there's no way they're giving up their number 1 next year. No chance.
That's why I'm saying take a gamble. At least call them. They are a crazy franchise. They do crazy things. Mm-hmm. Same with the Dolphins. Same with the Cardinals. See what these teams are willing to do. They're going to be the bottom 3 teams, and see at least offer it up. Give them the number 7 pick this year. Try to talk that up. I don't know.
So
I like what Peters has done.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
As far as this 2024 draft class, though, this is what still drives me nuts with this guy. I know you like to say give it 3 years, and I agree with you. I've given it 2 years. I don't see a whole lot. If you look at it, McCaffrey is still a 3 at best. Mm-hmm. Coleman is a rotational piece from what we've seen after that year 1 he played. He didn't play at all last year. Then if you drafted a guy to be a fullback in round 2, we got problems. Johnny Newton has been rotational at best. Mm-hmm. Sanders still had a good first year, but he was disappointing last year. And even I'm not going to say anything about Jaden, but I'm saying Caleb Williams was not part of the conversation. But he even had a Jaden Daniels, Drake May situation going on. Did he get that right? We don't know. And I think he did, but I'm just saying.
You got to give him credit for Jaden Daniels, right? I mean, whether he turns out to be the greatest that's ever played or just really, really good, you got to – at this point, there's some confidence in giving him credit for Daniels. Look.
No, Kevin, you're going to give him confidence for taking Jaden Daniels? That was the easiest pick known to man. He was either going to take Jaden or Drake
actually,
May.
remember this. Up until the final 2 weeks, and I don't want to relitigate the 2024 draft here other than to respond to what you said about our picks. But there were a lot of J.J. McCarthy people. There were a lot of Drake May people. So it wasn't, a slam dunk until maybe like the last 2 to 3 weeks when there was kind of a growing consensus on Daniels that he had separated himself. But back to your original point, I don't know why we're talking about the 2024 draft. But yeah, look, this time next year, I'll be ready to say what I'm starting to lean towards, which is those 3 second-round picks, man. Ben Sinnott needed to be a better player. Johnny Newton needed to be a better player. Look, Sanders still, I don't think anybody was going to let Sanders still go past where he went. I mean, Newton was a projected late first-round pick. But Sanders still, like Nick Saban thought was the best pound-for-pound player in the draft. And I there's enough there that I like. The Coleman, McCaffrey, McGee, Jury kind of still out. We'll see. But what else? Overall, you like what Peters has done this week?
I do. I thought we needed 5 or 6 defensive guys, and I think they've gotten it. And again, you're getting Jordan McGee. You're going to get Will Harris back for half the year. You're getting Dorrance Armstrong back for more than 2/3 of the year. You never know with these guys.
Dietrich Wise.
I might have went to see what Jacob Morton just got, 2 years, $11 million or whatever. I don't really know much about the KC kid except that he got hurt like the past 2 years. Yeah. Menahu, I might have went and just tried to plug our young guy and tried to say, hey, we got some upside with this kid. I'd rather
I
stick
liked
with
Martin.
him.
I'm surprised
I'd rather
Martin's not
stick
here.
with him
Quinn
than
loved him.
Amenahu for. Yeah, why not give a kid that earned the shot and he was young that contract over
Amenahu had some really productive moments, had some big time moments in big games, has played in big games.
He's been hurt, Kevin. He's not a healthy guy.
Well, he got hurt in 24, tore his ACL in the championship game against the Ravens, the one that they won in Baltimore. But man, when you watch just some of his better plays, that length along with Oweh, it's pretty impressive off the edge. Thanks, Stan. Appreciate it. Sean, Chad, Dre, Greg, stay there. We'll do one more segment of calls. Just your overall thoughts on this week and what Washington's done. Top 3 money spent, top 3 in new players acquired. They've certainly addressed a lot defensively, and they needed to because this defense was horrendous last year. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. This from Jack. Sheehan, it was your own fault. You and Max were doing countdowns to 12 noon. You raised the expectations of fireworks when free agency began.
Listen,
we did do that.
I'll put my hand up. I did play start, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines.
We didn't use the word fireworks. Fireworks was
everyone else used fireworks.
Ian Rappaport was the one that said expect fireworks from Washington. Yeah. By the way, we've gotten fireworks from Washington this week. Some of the fireworks were lit. They just kind of were duds because they couldn't close the deal on Pierce and Linderbaum and Jalen Phillips and Romeo Dobbs, etc. Am I missing somebody that they went after that they didn't get? I don't think so. Oh, Trey Hendrickson.
Yep, there it is.
Man, that would have been, had we been sitting here today talking about Trey Hendrickson and, oh, by the way, on the verge of giving Brandon Aiyuk a prove-it deal. And the Aiyuk thing, I'm telling you, I think that's going to happen.
It seems all but certain. Just from, it's one of those, worst-kept secrets in the league, but just waiting on San Francisco to finally make that decision to release him.
Schefter reported last night that there's no rush because they owe him no money. There are no trigger dates for more money, and they can wait it out to see if somebody decides to offer something. Obviously the preference would be to get it done now, but there are no activities until after the draft. So if San Francisco is going to wait until the draft to see if anybody offers, if they don't get the player they want, they don't get a receiver, and somebody comes up with, you'd have to come up with something meaningful enough, right? Well, no, because it's a release player. He's not eligible for free agency. It's a released player, so it's not like there's a comp pick for him. So anyway, this was Tim Settle earlier this morning talking about being in Washington, and he was asked about what he thinks his role will be. Here's what he said.
Hey, Tim, also welcome back to town. With regard, what was in terms of playing? What did they kind of sell you on as to the role? I know it's evolving with the new defensive coordinator, but what did they kind of sell you on the role and how they kind of saw you fitting in?
However they want me to, I'm interchangeable. So however they want to use me, I'm here. If that's the play, no, if that's the play 3. If they want me to line up outside, I could do it all. But I'm coming to control the middle of the field, I would say. But I'm definitely looking forward to. I think I'm gonna be used in a really good way, and I feel like I'm gonna be used definitely to help the defense. Just being able to penetrate and do what I've been doing the past my career. Just being able to be involved and just cause havoc, and just being able to disrupt plays every play, and just being able to be a force.
Tim Settle mentioned everything there. And that's the area where we're probably not going to know until we know. And that is when they start playing games, what it will really look like and where these players are lining up and playing. Although with a new coordinator, these off-season practices, these mini camps, certainly the training camp, even maybe a preseason game or two, you're going to want these coordinators to get into the rhythm of being a first-time play caller. So maybe we'll see more about, more of a reveal on what they're going to be when the season opener on the road this year against the New York Giants comes on September 13th. I'm predicting I'm just going to tell you right now, they're going to open up on the road. Seems like they've had, a lot of home openers in recent years, including last year, of course. Although the year before that was at Tampa, right? That was Jaden's first game at Tampa. Mock schedule about
coming soon.
About 6 weeks away, 6 or 7 weeks away. Ooh. Who knows? Maybe I'll have Washington in the first Wednesday night pre-Thanksgiving game. I thought a lot about that yesterday because I like to think about the schedule, the NFL schedule, and real games. I don't think I want that game. I don't think
too much of a
hassle. That's just a night for friends, for family, and now and look, when football's on TV, it's on TV. In my house, doesn't matter. Right. The Thursday night games, even if it's a bad matchup, it's on, and it'll be on Wednesday night before Thanksgiving if they play that game, and it'll get a massive audience. There's no doubt. I'd rather kind of have the football weekend start with the Lions at home on Thanksgiving Day. All right, let's get back to the phone lines. Your reaction to this first week, a very busy week, obviously, for Washington. Top 3 money spent, top 3 in new players added. Chad in Nashville. Chad, what's up?
What's up, Kev? Yeah, man, if I would have called Monday, I would have sounded pretty dramatic. But I probably wouldn't have sounded as, as iron dramatic as he is. I don't know what he's talking about. AP did exactly what we needed to do, which was get younger.
Well, he did give it a B-, B+, which for him, it's like average because he was a straight A student. But
that's what Ian is. Ian's meh to pretty much everything. Now, I will say I was a little dramatic on Monday. I kind of forget having a GM, for once, when we hadn't really had a GM since I was pretty much a little kid. And, trusting the process, I just was kind of getting sick of hearing, oh, man, they were so close. Starting to get to the spiel of like, man, you can't close the deal. You're pretty great at finding talent and awesome with the players, but you're not closing the deal. Now, but then after yesterday, I kind of look at even some of the contracts, and I feel like a couple of the players that got, in my opinion, kind of cheap. I liked them. And they got faster everywhere on the board.
Younger.
You got to give them. And younger. That's what you want. You went from the oldest team in the league, all right, and the slowest, which means slow, to faster. I mean, your linebacker runs faster than your tight end. Yep. Your DN runs faster than the corner that you just signed. If there's one pick I didn't like or don't get, it is the corner. Now, I don't know how they go about, assessing these players. I don't know if they're like, maybe it's coaching. Hey, I can use that talent and I can change that type of thing. But I like what AP did. I'm going to be honest with you. I think the draft is going to be crucial for him this year to hit because, and I know you don't have a lot of picks. That's what was concerning me too earlier this week is you don't have a lot of picks. Everyone wants them to trade someone. Trade them for what? And if you don't love somebody at 7, then you do need to try to trade back if you don't love somebody. The other caller that was saying that.
Yeah, but let me just tell you, if they don't love somebody at 7 in this draft, the chances of trading back are not going to be very high. There's just not going to be an appetite to trade up to 7.
And honestly, I don't think you get Jeremiah Love. I really think the Titans, I mean, I talk to a lot of Titans fans, and I live here in Nashville. I think the Titans draft Love, in my opinion. I think he's gone before we get there. He gets there. And I think the DNs that you signed, I think that helps kind of maybe narrow it down. Running back, I thought that they would go ahead and land somebody soon. But at the same time, you need a center. You have $20 million, I think, to work with. I think letting go of Biotish, I think they think that Allegretti is a cheaper Biotish. And that's the only reason they did it. I don't know why. That's the only question mark right now. Again, with what you're saying.
That's the one that I'd really love to know, and I'm going to try to find out. What the plan there and why it didn't happen with Biotish coming back. It's very possible with no guaranteed money left. They were like, no, you're not worth that. You're not worth a 3-year extension for $30 million, but we'll offer you this. And he said, no, I'd rather take my chances if you want to release me. And, and we still haven't seen the true details, or I haven't anyway. I know it's 3 for $30, but I don't know how much of it's guaranteed with the Chargers. But yeah, thanks, Chad, as always. Appreciate that. This from Brian. Brian just said, this feels very much like a McGee-McLean class. Remember when they were signing all those defensive players? Like, I can't even remember McLean's first name. Stacy McGee, I believe. They were both Cowboys, right? They were both Cowboys. And they, there were others like Culliver and Deshaun Goldson and Jerron Johnson. Ricky Jean, I think, turned out to be a pretty decent player. He was okay. But Stephen Paya. I mean, there were a couple of those years where Bruce literally went to TJ Maxx and looked for that bottom floor big bin of 80% off and just started doing his shopping from there, which is why, all of his suits always looked flammable. I don't think there were many natural fibers in them. I'm kidding. But man, was he a bargain basement shopper. Dre, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Thanks for having me on. How you doing?
Dre? Good.
Nothing much. I'm actually very intrigued by the free agency so far. We have a lot of holes to fill, and the defense, I feel like they're trying to set Dante Jones up for success, like they didn't do with Joe Witt. Depending on health and scheme fit, I think they add a few more players, and they might have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, in that first year, they did add Bobby Wagner and Dorrance Armstrong and Fowler Jr., and they drafted, a bunch of defensive players, but Jeremy Chin. So they did, try. They had, remember, they basically had to turn an entire roster for the most part over. You can't do it in 1 year. You can barely really do it in 2 years. But after 3, and this is why we're seeing, we've seen a 4-year deal. We've seen 3 3-year deals. Oweh was a 4-year deal. Settle, Chenal, and Okonkwo are 3-year deals. And Nick Cross is a 2-year deal. 2-year deal. We're not seeing all the 1-year deals. We're not seeing veteran, players that, you could get sort of on the cheap, but might be, good mentors to change the culture in the locker room, which was a lot of what, Wagner and Fowler and Ertz, a lot of that was about, we got to change the culture of this building. I mean, this place is rancid, which it was.
Indeed. And then even on offense, and I agree, even on offense, I'm glad if we're potentially moving on from Zach Ertz. I feel like his route running was predictable and defenses teed off on it. And
hello. Dre's kicking into car mode. We'll move on to Greg, but thanks for the call, Dre. Greg and Reston, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kev?
Hey, Greg.
I'm fairly unimpressed. I kind of don't understand the huge pendulum swing where everybody's now praising AP. I look at the whole aggressive narrative that people have been pushing. If they were aggressive, they would have won some of those bids for the high-end players they were going after. I would say they've been active. And you look at some of those contracts besides Oweh, outside of Oweh, none of those contracts look like they had to be very aggressive to get those. And they're filling up spots that were left over from empty roster spots anyways. Like, yeah, they got younger and faster. They got better. But how hard was it to get younger and faster from that team last year? And I think if they were aggressive, they would have landed one of those top ones. And I think that they weren't aggressive because they're being conservative. But the question there, Kevin, is
well, I think Chenal and Oweh, there was competition. So they did land both of those players with perhaps significant competition. But I don't mind the way you've described it. They've been very active. I think aggressive, to describe it as overly aggressive would be inaccurate because they would have landed one of those players by just paying a lot more money and kind of silly money to do that. But I hear what you're saying. That's fine.
And why I think they should have paid silly money to one of them at least would be if you look at the roster space the next few years, you don't pay silly money because you're concerned with your roster construction, re-signing your young stud players. We have one. We have one that we're worried about re-signing for the next 3 years. So I don't understand why you couldn't get aggressive enough to get Linderbaum, why you couldn't get aggressive enough to get Alec Pierce to leave his buddy Daniel Jones to the point of blank checks. Because we're number one in cap space again next year right now, even with the signings. So I don't understand.
By the way,
what they're going to use
Linderbaum's
that space
the
for.
one that I would have been fine with them overpaying the projected market, and even overpaying with the, in going a little bit higher than the Raiders. That one I would have been totally okay with. But I also don't want, Greg, I don't want the silly spending where there's certain, there's a certain age group in this fan base that has the experience of the Snyder first 9 years where it was a laughing stock. I mean, it was fun to watch it, but it was really, it was a clown show with everybody else. There's no doubt that Adam Peters definitely has an idea of what he's willing to pay, and he thinks that is the market for that player. And to your point, I don't think he gets impulsive. I think he's very disciplined during these days, and he won't go, he's not so hardline that he won't go slightly above, because I think they probably had to do that with Owe to a certain degree, especially with the guaranteed money. But Linderbaum's the one that I would have been okay with, paying the largest center contract in NFL history, because he's that good and the need was that severe.
I agree with you that I don't do the silly money thing either, and in a normal cap climate, I wouldn't at all. But what would be the downside to signing Alec Pierce or Linderbaum to $32 million a year for 3 or 4 years? Look at our cap the next 3 or 4 years.
Well, how about just with Linderbaum,
worried?
$28 million? How about we just go $1 million more a year, and for, essentially over a 3-year period, an extra $9 million bucks, I would have done that in a heartbeat, no doubt, if it would have made the difference.
There would be no downside.
Pierce was not.
Your roster's empty for 2 years.
Yeah,
Like,
Pierce to me, I don't.
$million.
I'm glad they didn't land Pierce, to be honest with you. I'm fine with that. I would have loved Dobbs for what he got, and we'll see. But yeah, no, it's very active though. A very active week for sure, and bigger commitments than they've ever made, money wise and year wise, in terms of guaranteed dollars. Sean in DC, go ahead.
Yeah, hey Kevin, just a couple of points. Just first thing, I think we should take it easy on Ian. You do have to remember it is Big Ten tennis season coming up. That Purdue mixed doubles film will not grind itself, and he's only got so much time.
Let me tell you something, and it's not just the Purdue the Purdue mixed doubles team against Northwestern in that first round of the Big Ten tournament. I mean, he won't even listen that week. We won't get any calls from him that entire week. He'll be so knee deep into that.
Especially with
his
that
two-hand
NIL money
backhand
rolling in too. I imagine he's monitoring the wires closely for that. So,
by the way, the two-hand backhand was not a shot. Lots of men have two-handed backhands, including yours truly. But continue, please.
To each their own. So I love what's been happening. I was one of those people freaking out on Monday. I will gladly admit that. I couldn't be more happy. I think they've completely remade the defense with youth and speed and all that stuff. And I happen to like all the guys. If you're an NFL fan, I think you'll be familiar with some of these players. Now, it is time to get Jaden some of his toys, right? So here's what I'm going to throw out to you. Now, Stan made a trade suggestion a little while ago. I think that was fairly ridiculous, but I'm a Jeremiah Love guy. I think the guy is going to be a monster. If you don't, that's fine too. But what about this? You said you're not going to take the 7th pick overall unless it's Bijan, right? Yeah. So I think you can see where I'm going about this. What about we trade number 7 for Bijan? Remember, James Pierce on the Falcons, who was nasty last year, that guy's going to jail for a long time. What about number 7? Probably the second next year, probably some kind of a decent player as well. What about figuring out a way to get Bijan on this team?
Well, what mind would Atlanta have to be in to deal Bijan Robinson? Right now, the most productive running back in total yards from scrimmage in the game. Maybe the best total yards from scrimmage player in the game right now. It'd require a lot more than number 7 overall.
Of course, it would.
And they're not trading him. Why are we doing this?
I don't know, because I really want him, Kevin. I really want him.
Yeah, I would love him too. And I like Jeremiah Love. Like watching Notre Dame, I'm like, man, that guy's going to be great. I just, at number 7 overall, to me, I don't put him in the Bijan class. I don't even put him in the Gibbs class. I think there's more straight line. I've said Josh Jacobs with blazing speed, like a much faster version of Josh Jacobs, which, by the way, is not bad. It's one hell of a running back in the NFL.
No doubt.
But
I would take any of those.
If they take an offensive player at 7, I hope it's Carnell Tate. I think he's going to be a really good player.
I do think a kind of serious conversation does have to be had about the lack of toys that Jaden has been surrounded with. I mean, look at what Chicago has done.
Yeah.
I mean, they've spent 2 first-rounders, a second-rounder. I mean, Luther Burden would – I mean, anyways, we need to – that needs to happen.
No doubt. It does. Appreciate the call. Stay on hold, Robert and Jason and anybody else, and then we'll get to Dante Whitner at noon. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. From Trent, you forgot Greg Toller, David Bruton, and Deshaun Goldson. Yeah, there were some beauties those years in the 20 teens. Old Bruce, look at what I got, Dan. Who is that person? I don't know, but man, we got him for 50, 60% less than what everybody else was willing to pay. He got a bargain, man, on the top mediocre players in the league, no doubt. All right, let's finish this up, and then I want to get to Dante Whitner a little bit later than I had predicted at the beginning of the show. Robert in Annapolis. Robert, your thoughts on Washington's week. Go ahead.
All right, good morning. Was it Rolando McClain you were thinking of? He had been with the Raiders. He was a very talented player.
I remember him. No. It was...
He was always in trouble. Okay. I thought maybe that was
Stacey McGee and something McLean, but it wasn't Rolando. I don't think.
Okay.
I'll look it up. Go ahead.
All right. I just wanted to comment on Owe since I watched him for 4.5 years. If I had one word to describe him, it would be frustrating. You know, they drafted him in the first round out of Penn State.
Yep.
Because of his physicality and all the skills you mentioned. He actually didn't even have a sack his senior year. He just never developed to the level that they thought he would. Now, he did play well with the Chargers, but keep in mind
he played
that
well
game he had
for
in the
your
playoffs
team in 2024. He just had a bad start to this season.
Well, look what he was surrounded by.
Terrell McClain.
Okay, Terrell. Well, we got that solved. But anyhow, so the thing about Owe is you're paying him a lot. You know, when I say $25 million a year defensive player, at least on my team, I'm thinking of Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton and Matt Abute, but not him. But we'll see.
Yeah, but it's top 15-ish for that position. The position pays a lot more than they're paying him.
Okay. All right. What we all do, Kevin, with our team is in the off season, we find reason to be optimistic about virtually everything they do. And then unfortunately, too often it may not pan out, but we'll see what he does. I don't see how he's going to be better with the players over there so far than what he did with the players over here, but he may pan out
in LA.
He played mostly in a 4-3 alignment. So
yes.
I don't know how it'll.
But he played a lot in a 2-point stance with the Chargers last year.
He did. No, he's got skills. But let's see how it goes, and then good luck to you on him.
Thanks,
right?
Robert. Appreciate it. Jason, real quickly, go ahead. Sorry for making you hold. Go.
No, Kevin. I'm ecstatic. I honestly think they filled a lot of holes, including I think the tight end was a bonus one that was kind of. I can't even believe they brought that guy in. I think what they did leaves anything open at 7. I personally hope Love is there, but I don't think that's going to be the case any. And I tell you, your podcast last night, I loved it. Although I wish I hadn't heard what he said about a nuke, because that may have changed how I feel about that. I didn't want them to bring a nuke, but with what he alleged may have been the issue, I feel like you might have to give him a chance, and I wish I didn't feel that way.
What are you talking about? A nuke? I'm sorry, I'm missing it.
You had a guy on your podcast last night that was saying that maybe there was some mental health reasons why he acted that way.
Aiyuk. You said a nuke.
Aiyuk, yeah.
Sorry, Aiyuk. I'm
sorry.
I'm gonna play that for everybody next. Good tease. Well done. Appreciate it, Jason. Up next, Dante Whitner played safety in the NFL for many years, including here in his final season of his career in 2016. He does a podcast out in San Francisco with Hall of Famer Patrick Willis, covering the 49ers. He joined me on my podcast yesterday, and he had a lot to say about Brandon Aiyuk and what his future is and whether or not Washington should be interested. That's next. Joining me right now to talk about Brandon Aiyuk and maybe even the safety that Washington added earlier today is Dante Whitner. Dante played for Washington in 2016. He was a first-round pick all the way back in 2006, played the bulk of his career in Buffalo and San Francisco. But at the very end of his career, that 2016 team, which was a really good team offensively, Dante started 9 games and played in a lot of the games defensively for Washington at safety down the stretch. By the way, Dante, I had Kirk Cousins on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about that season. That was a really good offensive team with a ton of weapons. I mean, Deshaun, Pierre, Jordan Reed. That was a good offensive football team. I'm sorry?
Crowder.
Jamison Crowder. Yeah. Trent Williams. Yeah. It was a good team. Do you remember how that season ended?
I do. We didn't have any consistency on defense. And before I even arrived in Washington, I had a familiarity with Perry Fuel, the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And early in my career, I learned a lot from Troy Vincent, being in the same locker room, learning under Perry Fuel. And then I realized that Perry Fuel didn't understand defense. He lost a few games for us with just normal calls that I later understood once I got to San Francisco. So, for example, in Buffalo, we were playing the Dallas Cowboys, and we were up, 3 touchdowns early in that game. Tony Romo and the boys started to come back. At the end of the game, we're up by, I think a touchdown, and he calls a cover 2, when all he had to do was call a sideline, force the ball into the middle of the field, somebody get tackled, they get it out of bounds, they kick a long field goal or something and tie the game and beat us in overtime. So I had a familiarity with him. And then when I got to Washington, didn't much change. Everything was very basic.
Well, Joe Barry,
opportunity to change it.
Joe Barry was actually the defensive coordinator. Perry Fuel was the DB's
yeah, but he
coach.
would take a lot of insight from Perry Fuel.
Huh, interesting.
So somebody has the label, but then it's a team effort behind the scenes.
Yeah. But what I was going to say about that last game of the season, all we had to do, and I say we because I'm a Redskins fan, all we had to do was beat the Giants, who were playing for nothing, to get to the postseason, and we lost that game at home. And that was sort of the beginning of the end of that group that they had together, which was very good offensively, but to your point, really was a team that struggled defensively. But anyway, Dante's not on to talk about the past. He's on to talk about the future. He and Patrick Willis, certainly one of the best inside linebackers of all time, they do a podcast together called the Grit Code Podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. So I want to talk about Brandon Aiyuk and the very likely possibility that he's going to be available and that Washington might be interested. Before we get to what kind of player you think he might be if he ends up playing in Washington, Dante, tell us from your perspective, what the hell happened here over the last year in San Francisco?
Well, it was a lot of immaturity, a lot of ego. And when you're dealing with a guy like Brandon Aiyuk, you have to think that behind the scenes, someone told him something and didn't actually follow through on it, or something of that nature. And then I think a lot of it is, the power of, once you sign those major contracts, there's a lot of people out there that don't understand the power of feeling like you can do whatever, whenever, and however you want to. So it was about a combination of those things. But I think all in all, Brandon Aiyuk is still in his prime. And whoever gets Brandon Aiyuk is going to get a motivated guy who feels like there's a lot of people against him and he has to prove himself all over again.
Do you think Washington's the landing place for him?
I think it should be. I think that right now, with him not trusting organizations, with him not trusting a lot of his teammates, I think when you have a deep-rooted relationship with a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, I think that that's the most opportune situation for Brandon Aiyuk. And he already has trust coming in the door, because it's not that, everybody has to earn his trust. He feels like, who can I trust? So I think Jaden Daniels getting in that offense and being out there with McLaurin, I think that will be a dynamic duo that, a lot of defenses would have to stay up nice to try to stop.
What do you think Brandon Aiyuk is as a healthy, motivated player? Where is he on the list of really good receivers in the NFL?
He's a top 10 receiver in the NFL. Top 10 receiver. When he's 100% healthy, locked in, and he's on top of his game, he's a top 10 wide receiver. And I believe that he's going to come back extremely healthy. He missed more than an entire year. He's had to hear the noise, and I think he's going to come back extremely motivated. So if Washington can get him, they're going to get one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League.
What makes him a top 10 receiver in your mind?
His ability to be able to separate at the top of the route, make every route look the same, the ability to track the ball, the ability to run intermediate routes, over the middle routes, yards after the catch, the deep ball, the way that he tracks the football, and he's extra motivated on game day. There's a lot of guys that's motivated throughout practice and off season. There's a different switch that you have to flick in the regular season, and then even more so in the playoffs. And Brandon Aiyuk, whenever the moment is biggest, he comes through with some of the biggest plays. And I've seen it for the last 5 years. He's still in his prime, and I guarantee you that they're going to get a dynamic player.
Does he block well enough as a wide receiver? I mean, Juwan Jennings has been there as one of the true elite blocking wide receivers in the game during his career. What is Brandon Aiyuk as a blocker?
Well, I don't think you can play for Kyle Shanahan in a run-first offense if you're not a good blocker. And there's been many times on different highlights from Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and anybody that catches the ball, Deebo Samuel, where you'll see Brandon Aiyuk giving extra effort, helmet almost falling off down the field. So I don't think that you have to question his blocking ability when you come from a Kyle Shanahan offense.
Good stuff on Brandon Aiyuk. One more on him, and I do want to ask you about Juwan Jennings, but what would be your biggest concern? I would assume, I don't know if you would assume the same, that this is going to be, a highly incentivized deal. There's not going to be a whole hell of a lot of guaranteed money. This is going to be, it's probably going to have to be a prove-it contract. First of all, do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. When you leave an organization like the San Francisco 49ers and you get everything that you wanted in a contract, and then, you go through an unfortunate situation where you get an injury, I think the number one thing with Brandon Aiyuk, it's not going to be on the field. It's not going to be in the locker room. It's going to be his emotional intelligence and growth, because we've seen a lot of immaturity. And there's no football player that I've known, that I've played with, that would have handled the situation like Brandon Aiyuk did.
Right.
Especially when you already have the contract that you want. All you really have to do is show up, go to meetings, go to rehab, get yourself back in peak conditioning. I don't know anybody that would have handled it like this. So it might be a slight bit of some type of mental illness as well there. So I say this all the time. Guys should get therapy. We deal with a lot, especially the current players. And hopefully if Brandon Aiyuk can, grow and erase a lot of that immaturity and increase his emotional intelligence, there's no reason why he can't be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL.
That is some really good stuff and very thoughtful. And I'm curious as to what you would be looking for, what you would be asking is, let's just say if, play GM for a moment or play somebody in the front office of an organization that's exploring the idea of signing Brandon Aiyuk. What would be the questions you would ask him? What would you need to know about that, maturity level and that emotional quotient, that part of it, and whether or not there's some therapy that would be necessary, and would he be willing to see that? Like, I'm just throwing it out there. I have no idea if that's what his issues are at all, but you mentioned them. What would you ask him? What would you need to know before signing him?
Well, first and foremost, I would need to know the entirety of the story, because we know it's always 3 sides to a story. Secondly,
his side, her side, and the truth usually is somewhere in between,
and
right?
The truth.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I would need to know if he's willing to take accountability for how it all played out.
Wow.
And, that's a deep conversation. And then I would know, what are you doing to regulate yourself and make sure that this doesn't happen again? And a lot of times, you know what that is? That's therapy. That's something that makes you uncomfortable, where you have to tell a third party your innermost feelings and figure out the type of traumas that made you react and act out in this situation. And then I would need to know, and I need to see it each and every day. I need you to show up before everybody else. I need you to stay in the film room. I need you to stay in the gym. I need you to stay in the weight room. I need you to be a leader, not just with your voice, but with your actions. And that's each and every day. And then it would be heavy stipulations in the contract, right? Any type of not showing up, any type of, a pin drop, we're fining you. And you put it incentive based. Right now, I think the going rate right now will probably be 1 year, $15 million, with the chance to earn $5 or $6 million based on incentives, based on play yards and team success. So that's what I would do for Brandon Aiyuk. The rest of it, I don't know if it's tangible enough to even gauge.
You said something in that answer that I think, for me, and just thinking about it, just as an observer of the human condition for, lots of different people in lots of different parts of life, that it's that taking of accountability. You mentioned that very early in your answer. If he didn't take accountability for his actions, and you knew the story enough to know that there was an area, there was room for him to take accountability, would that be too big of a red flag for you to overcome?
That would be a very red flag. A very red flag. Because remember, just because he signed on to the Washington Commanders doesn't mean that they're going to have success, and doesn't mean that he's going to get back to the way that he's accustomed to playing. So if those things don't go as you expect them, how are you going to react? Are we going to have to deal with the San Francisco 49ers, Brandon Aiyuk? Or in those tough moments, are you going to show the growth, maturity, and the emotional intelligence that we need to get this thing back and correct it? So that would be a huge red flag, because taking accountability is primary before you want to fix any type of bad habit, mistake, anything that you've done in life. So you have to take accountability first and foremost. And then I think that he can go on to play some football.
Yes. Obviously, we haven't even mentioned the medical. He's obviously got to clear the medical and be healthy physically off of the ACL injury before you even move forward with that. But that's really, really thoughtful and good stuff on Aiyuk. So let me ask you about Jauan Jennings. He's been one of my favorites in free agency, and I've wanted Washington to sign him. I thought that, and still think he'd be a great fit here. They're going to change Dante, the offense. David Blau's the new offensive coordinator. It's going to be more of a Ben Johnson / Kevin O'Connell. Those were his two influences before Cliff Kingsbury the last 2 years. So they're going to be under center more. They're going to run the ball more, marry the run to the play action game more. And to me, Jauan's perfect for that style of offense. What do you think of him as a player and a fit for Washington?
Well, there's certain players that I like more in certain offenses. And Jauan Jennings is a player that I like more in a Kyle Shanahan offense, where he'll strategically get you on mismatches to exploit the weakness of the defense, and it really doesn't matter who it is. When I think about Jauan Jennings, his number one characteristic is effort, and number two is toughness. And then he does have some speed and quickness, but I don't see him as one of those guys you can just align it to X or to Z and go out there and win consistently. So I think that's probably why the 49ers passed and allowed him to go out and test the market. I'm not saying that his market is closed for San Francisco. I'm just saying that they allowed him to go out and test his true market, because I probably am correct about how front offices and particularly general managers are viewing him, especially when you turn on the film. When you have a run-first offense with Christian McCaffrey and a play action and all of those different gimmicks, it's different than being able to just line up and beat somebody over and over and over.
Just real quickly, and you may not have an opinion on these players, but Washington just signed Nick Cross safety from Indianapolis. Do you have any thoughts on that signing and on Nick Cross as a player?
Well, I can't speak intelligently about him, and that would be unfair. So, because I haven't really studied him that much.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, it would be unfair for me to speak on it.
Okay. Then the last one I have for you is just my favorite signing so far in free agency, just across the league, or certainly near the top of the list, is Mike Evans to San Francisco. A receiver like Brandon Aiyuk was in 2023 that is going to really, insist that a defense focus a lot of attention, and I think it just ends up making it so much easier for McCaffrey and for whenever Kittle comes back. What do you think of the Evans addition?
Well, I think perception is, and on paper, they should dominate the league. When you have an all-pro Mike Evans who's dominated the league for 11 consecutive years, probably 12 if he didn't get injured this year. George Kittle, ever since he's been in the league. Christian McCaffrey, the same. You have an up-and-coming Ricky Pearsall who's going to enter the season healthy, and a Brock Purdy who's at the top of his game. So I would think, perception-wise, people would think like, oh, man, they're going to all click. They're all going to shred the league. And if they do, the 49ers, they deserve to be Super Bowl favorites. But then when I think in reality, and I know how I felt at about 30, 31, 32 years old, and when I think about Father Time, he doesn't send a notice. Father Time just sneaks up on you and just snatches your talent like the repo man. So when you think about the ages of these players, Trent Williams is going to be 38. You have Mike Evans is going to be 33, coming off consecutive years of having like big injuries. You have George Kittle, who's going to be 33. He's coming off an Achilles injury. Christian McCaffrey has been known to be injury prone before this past season.
Right.
I'm thinking it's the oldest offense in the National Football League, and it can either be really, really, really good, or it can be really, really, really bad. And we will find out, but I'm not too sure about it right now, being that they didn't really go out and get the youth that I thought they needed.
You know what was interesting about the 49ers season is that Washington was decimated by injuries this year. I mean, their quarterback essentially only played in 4 games start to finish. That's usually doomed for any team, especially when the quarterback's a really good one. And they were, they lost their wide receiver.
You have Brock Purdy.
Well, that's what I'm getting to here in a moment. More times than not, when you suffer the kind of injury season that Washington had this year, you're in big trouble, because it wasn't just their quarterback. Their best players were lost for portions, if not the entire season. And all season long, I would take calls from people who would say, well, what about the 49ers, Kevin? The 49ers have had all these injuries, and here they are, 12-5. And I did say during the course of the season, first of all, they still have a lot of really good players on the field, number one. Number two is they really didn't have the roughest of schedules. They were beating some pretty fair to less than fair teams. And when they got up against Seattle in that season finale, that score was really not even reflective of how one-sided that game was. And then the playoff game was obviously a rout as well. And by the way, 2 49ers, Super Bowl runner-up teams, the following years they got injured a lot and didn't play well. So I don't know where this is leading, other than for me to ask you, why do you think the 49ers of 2025 were somewhat of the aberration in which they were a very injured team, but they won 12 games and went to the postseason?
Well, first and foremost, I agree with you. They did have an easier schedule this year.
Yep. They did have an easier schedule. You're saying they did. You're saying they did.
They did.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they did. They had an easier schedule. Secondly, they didn't have majority of their major players with major injuries all at the same time. Then the backup quarterback situation. When Brock Purdy went out, Mac Jones, who had experience starting in the National Football League, Kyle Shanahan was able to strategically pretty much overfeed Christian McCaffrey in the underneath game, running the football, and the defense was bend but don't break. That's how they did it. So it wasn't anything like magical. It was just having a backup quarterback that's competent, that doesn't turn the football over, that takes the field with confidence, and believes that they're a starter in the league. So, which is why Mac Jones and his value has skyrocketed.
I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. The insight on Aiyuk was great. Thanks, Dante.
Oh, thank you. You have a good one.
Dante Whitner, everybody, from the Grit and Code podcast with Hall of Fame linebacker Patrick Willis. Interesting stuff on Aiyuk. Ayuk's going to more likely than not get released. The 49ers could still hold on to him for a while and try to trade him. We'll see what happens there. But, man, all indications are that if he does get released, the destination is here. How do we feel about that? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Do you want Aiyuk on a prove-it deal? Dante Whitner said at 1 year, $15 million, the rest in incentives. I don't think he's getting that much in guaranteed money. I think something less than 10 and everything else is incentives with lots of outs, easy outs for the team if things go sideways. Yes or no on Brandon Aiyuk? 301-230-0980. When we come back, you're going to hear what another NFL former receiver and his personal coach said about Aiyuk. That's next. So former NFL receiver T.J. Houshmandzadeh, remember he played with the Bengals. I think most of his career was with the Bengals. I think so. I guess he's been kind of a personal coach at times for Brandon Aiyuk, and he's friendly with Brandon Aiyuk. He was on a podcast and talked about Aiyuk and whether or not it would make sense to sign him. Here's what he said.
What's the question again?
Should any team want Brandon
I knew
Aiyuk?
that was the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm answering. Yes, they should want him.
Okay.
But you got to be careful. And I say this, I like BA, but I said this last week about Stephon Diggs, and this normally only happens when a player starts to get older. BA is still really young, fast, quick, explosive. But what he did last year is kind of crazy. You got all this guaranteed money. You ain't showing up. You getting fined. And you basically forego, what was it, over $30 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over $30 million? Like, if you're a team and you give him a good contract, is this what you're going to get? Because this is what he has shown us. Signed his deal with the Niners. Bad luck, he gets hurt. Don't want that. But it's how he handled everything after that. Yes, he's going to get signed. But if you're a team, you got to structure that contract the right way. You got to make sure that you protect yourself because of what he's shown you to be. You know, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, they talking to their people across the NFL, telling them everything that went down and how it occurred. And so, yes, I would want him on my team. I would. But it got to be at the right price. I got to make sure financially that we are protected as a team and organization, because I've never seen anybody do this at so young of an age, got so many years ahead of him. I've never seen this.
Yeah, I mean, what he did, and there's a lot of story there that obviously most people don't seem to know. But Washington's going to need to know what the story is. And I would assume they'll find out certainly the story from the San Francisco perspective, because Adam Peters is friendly with everybody in San Francisco. But to me, this is like, a no-brainer if it's a total 1-year, highly incentivized deal that you can walk from at any point. Like if there's craziness going on, you can cut him. And it's not going to hurt you, cap-wise or otherwise. I was looking to see, find other guys that were in this position, really talented, question marks about character, question marks about various things, and what like a 1-year prove-it deal looked like. Antonio Brown, when he signed with the Bucs, signed a deal that was essentially a deal that would pay him up to $6.5 million, but only $3 million of it was guaranteed. Dante Whitner said he thinks it'll be $15 million. I don't see it being that much, and I don't know that I would do that much. But let me just emphasize something for those of you that just watch our team. If you don't know what Brandon Aiyuk is as a player fully healthy, just go back and watch some of the 2023 season. He was an elite number 1 wide receiver in the league. And the system that he's going to be joining is going to be a system that we think is going to look a lot like the one he played in. I can only imagine what Washington would be with Aiyuk, a healthy, motivated, sane wide receiver opposite Terry, with Chigakonkwo at tight end, and then whatever ends up being in the backfield. We got a long way to go there. Certainly still looking for another receiver to join the mix. I don't know about Luke McCaffrey. I don't know about Jalen Lane in terms of being that, third receiver. But you'd have truly, if you got Brandon Aiyuk, I think most of you know this. If you get Brandon Aiyuk from 2023, your starting wide receiver pair is top 5 to top 10 worst case in the league. So count me in on Aiyuk on a 1-year prove-it deal that there's really little to no pain if you walk from it at any point. He's got to understand that walking away from $30 million after the long drawn out contract negotiation and a very serious injury. By the way, the medicals obviously got to be there. That's a given. That's, the assumption is the medical's good. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. If Brandon Aiyuk is healthy and you can get him for no compensation trade-wise, he gets cut by the 49ers. And again, I mentioned this earlier. Adam Schefter reported that people expected Aiyuk to get released yesterday at 4 p.m. It didn't happen. Schefter said that they've got no money. There are no trigger dates on any new money. And there's no sense for them to cut him now when maybe a team will get desperate and offer them something meaningful between now and maybe the draft or shortly thereafter. So, we may have to wait on this. Maybe not. We'll see. But yes, if he is on a 1-year painless to get out of prove it deal, the medical's right. 100% yes for me. 301-230-0980. What do you say? Phone lines are open. We'll get to your calls next. All right, yes or no on Brandon Aiyuk? I say 100% yes if the medical is cleared, obviously he's healthy, and it's a prove-it deal. It's a 1-year prove-it deal where you can get out of it at any time without pain. And obviously no trade compensation. This assumes a release, an outright release by the 49ers. People, he was so blanking good in 2023. He was a legit top 10 receiver. He and Terry together, in 23 vintage with Terry, that's a top 5 to top 8 worst case wide receiver pairing in the NFL. Let's start in Landover with our guy Rod. Rod, yes or no on Aiyuk if the 49ers end up releasing him?
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Kevin. I mean, yeah, if it's a prove-it 1-year deal, I mean, I guess why not? I guess at that point, it ain't a whole lot to lose. But I would say, man, I'm not that high on Terry McLaurin like some people are. I'm just not. The 2024 Terry, we might see again, we might not. But even in 2024, I didn't think he was I thought he was maybe barely a top 10 receiver, maybe. So I'm not that high on Terry. So I'm saying that to say that even if we get Aiyuk at that prove-it deal, entering the draft, man, if we fingers crossed, if we can't get Jeremiah Love, I think they would have to get the best receiver that's on the board at that point. Because I'm just not really that high on Terry McLaurin that much. I mean, he has too many games where he's like invisible. But yeah, so I guess if it's a prove-it 1-year deal, why not?
Yeah. I think Brandon Aiyuk in 2023, honestly, and I know that some of you think that I don't like Terry, and I do. I just get a little bit annoyed by those of you who think that he's like an elite wide receiver. He's not. He's just a really good receiver, and he's a number one. There are 32 number one receivers in the league, meaning 32 opportunities to be a number one, and he's certainly in the top half of that, right around there anyway. Brandon Aiyuk in 2023, 75 catches because they spread it around. Obviously, McCaffrey had 67 catches. Kittle had 65. Debo had 60. For 1,342 yards, he averaged 18 yards per reception. The space he creates, the ease in which he gets open, again, health, prove it to me, incentivized, 1-year deal that you can get out of. George in Annapolis, yes or no on Aiyuk?
Yeah, yes, Kevin. By the way, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
My big thing is I would like to see the knee. I want to see what his 40 time is and compare it to what he did at the combine when he first came in. And I want to see if he can cut on the damn thing. And if he can do that and his head is straight, I say, sure, why not an incentive contract? I'm good with it.
He ran, let's see what he ran at the combine when he came out. First round pick, Arizona State, played with Jaden at the combine or whatever, the pre-draft measurables. And yes, from the combine, he ran 4.5. He ran 4.5. I mean, he's, not a blazing time, but in a football uniform, unbelievable separation he gets as a wide receiver. Bobby in North Carolina. Bobby, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. It's a resounding yes if his medicals come back. But I'm going to piggyback on that, too. Something else I would do is I'm kicking the tires on Stephon Diggs.
Me
Let's
too.
Bring him home. Should have drafted him when he left Maryland, Kevin. I think it's going to be a good fit. And then you go into the draft with that number 7 pick and get your running back Love if he's there. And let's go to freaking work next year, Bob, because I think what they've done the first couple of days of free agency on the defensive side, I think they've upgraded there in several positions. But get this wide receiver room right, get you that home run threat at running back, and keep Jaden upright 17 weeks, and let's go to work, man. But I would love Diggs to be in burgundy and gold this coming up year, man. I just think he's got too much football left in his tank not to kick the tires on him seriously, Kevin.
Thank you, Bobby, as always. And, you just mentioned something, this is a time of the year where there's excitement and there's a lot of activity and there's a lot going on, but this is still a league where none of that matters if you don't have the quarterback. And that's what I keep reminding myself heading into the draft even. Man, it's nice to not be in that mode anymore. Got to keep him upright. He's got to keep himself upright. But if he plays 17, the results will be much different than they were last year. It's just a matter of how much different. Improve the defense, get it back to the middle of the pack, better coached, more turnovers created. What Adam Peters has done this week, it just kind of reminds me what he said in that post-season that week after the Philadelphia season finale, when he said, Jaden and the offense will be better if we improve on defense. Improving the overall team and the offensive output relies so much on the defense, and that's what he's focused on. I mean, think about the first 2 years. Now, Jaden barely played last year, but even for Marcus Mariota and Josh Johnson, they needed to score almost every single time they had the ball. They had to do that pretty much in 2024. That's no way to live. It's no way to put yourself into position to contend. You've got to get off the field occasionally. And so what Adam Peters said about helping to improve the offense actually includes improving our defense. It's a big part of it, man. More possessions, better field position, less, sort of frantic, panicked context in terms of the score and the time. Let's live a little bit, less on the edge every week offensively, where if we punt, we may be down 2 scores the next time we get the ball back. Bones, go ahead.
My call, shout out to my homie Matt. Hey Kevin, man, I'm like this, man. Stuff, man. He a good receiver and everything. I would love to have him here, man. But that mental health thing, man, that's another animal, man. So we're gonna need to get a physician or a therapist or a doctor, to watch him, man.
All right, we got an issue with your phone, Bones, but we get the general gist. I think, like Doc used to say, when they would, when they signed somebody with, let's just say, off the field issues, they're like, this is the NFL. These teams are generating hundreds of millions of dollars in profit in many cases. Why not hire somebody to make sure? Like it was Fred Davis. He's like, how do they not, with a guy with that kind of talent, have somebody there at his front door when he's supposed to be up pounding on it and then driving him to make sure he gets to work on time every day? I don't know. There's a certain level of maturity you'd like to see your players have, and a certain amount of care to actually get up and get there on their own. But yeah, Aiyuk would come with a lot of red flags, and they'd have to be comfortable with those red flags going in and comfortable that they could get out without much pain. I would do it. Our Waldorf Honda Twitter poll of the day, yes or no on Brandon Aiyuk, waldorfhonda.com. So I said earlier in the show that it was my what do you got, that Kawhi Leonard last night scored 45 points in 32 minutes. He was 15 of 20 from the floor, 6 of 9 from behind the arc. And I just said, this is a guy, he's always been one of my favorites, and I concede that. But I think that legitimately, had he had a healthy career, he'd be considered a top 10 player of all time. And I think part of it is that he's been one of the best defenders of his era, a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, a 2-time NBA Finals MVP. He is having right now an unbelievable, I think, MVP caliber season. And the Clippers are the first team in NBA history to start their season 15 games under 500 and actually move above 500, which they did last night. I think they're going to be a very dangerous team in the postseason. This was Anthony Edwards, who faced Kawhi last night in a 153-128 loss, with Kawhi going for 45 in just 32 minutes. This was a contemporary and a young player in the league talking about Kawhi after the game.
I mean, In all honesty, Kawhi may be one of the best players to ever play the game when he's healthy. I think a lot of his peers feel the same way about him. If he's healthy, 100%, ain't no stopping Kawhi. So, I mean, you got to deal with it. He dealt it to us tonight again.
See that when you're hearing it from contemporaries, and there's been a lot going around on him with some of these games that he's had recently. They've just not only been high scoring outputs and great defensive nights, but it's his efficiency. He was 15 of 20 last night. He's shooting over 50% from the field. He's approaching 40% from behind the arc, and he's shooting over 90% from the free throw line. And it never looks like he's trying very hard. His peers in that league, LeBron said it a few weeks ago, they think he is already, forget the injuries, one of the greatest to ever do it. I had a friend of mine who watched him recently at my advice that just said, he's a true artist, and there is an artistry in the way he goes about it. It's different. It's unique. He's a killer. I just wish and hope he stays healthy. The Caps lost last night, Max, to the Flyers. That is not a good loss. They get the Sabres tonight, but they are in big now playoff trouble. As they are, 66. They got 16 games left. You start counting up the number of teams they'd have to pass, and I think the count now is 5 teams that they'd have to pass to get into that last wild card spot. This is not a playoff team this year. Very disappointing, right?
Yeah, it has been a tough stretch for the Caps. I mean, it's the lack of that top line scorer, and then letting go of John Carlson and Nick Dowd at the trade deadline. Big blow to the locker room. So yeah, it's going to be tough for them to kind of get back on track. They had a good couple showings the past few nights, but Buffalo's playing as good of hockey as I've ever seen them play in my lifetime, which makes me happy to see, but not when it's against my team. So Buffalo will probably be my team heading into the playoffs if we don't make it. But yeah, rough showing for the Caps so far since the trade deadline.
Maryland's miserable season came to an end with a second-round loss. They did win a game.
Too early, in my opinion.
Played really hard. Say again?
Too early, in my opinion. I would have liked them to get a win yesterday, too.
Yeah, it would have been nice. They were actually up 11 in the first half on Iowa, and they would have played Ohio State today, but they would have had to win 6 in the Big Ten to get to the tournament. Meantime, Georgetown won last night. They beat DePaul, so they get Villanova tonight in the second round of the Big East tournament. Virginia's playing right now. Virginia, a lock. They went 27-4, ranked 10th in the country. And the undefeated team in America, Miami of Ohio, 31-0 in their quarterfinal MAC game right now. They are playing it just like they've played the last few. The game is tied with under 3 minutes to go against a very average UMass team. Would be interesting to see them go into the tournament as a 34-0 team. Lots of college hoops, man. I mean, basically noon until well after midnight, the rest of the month pretty much. All right, we're done. Chris is next. Back tomorrow.